right, I'd like to jump in and talk about dreams on a new level. This is the fourth lecture on exploring dreams. What we are dealing with is the problem of symbols first, then the logos, and then meditation. Now, psychology has taken over, as it were, the whole world of symbols, archetypes, monads, and chief among them, of course, are Freud and Jung. Now, what is meant by a symbol is very important for the whole evening, so let me get it very clear from the beginning. Right? A symbol is an image that comes from the inner dynamics of the psyche, and therefore it expresses an intra-psychic conflict. It's not universal, it's personal, and it's historical. Now, I have a couple of interesting and simple quotes for you. I want to make sure this comes from Carl Jung. Right. That symbols are intra-psychic phenomena. They occur when people have personal conflicts, and therefore it expresses, in essence, an irrational life. So when you have people going through conflicts, right, if there's a conflict, right, it's within themselves. That means it's inner, within the psyche itself. And therefore, for the individual and the way it expresses itself, it is an irrational aspect of human life. Not rational. It's an irrational aspect of life. Here's a good quote for it. It is an irrational life process which expresses itself in definite symbols. That's what a symbol is. It's not a mandala, which is something different. Right. So therefore, when a person has an inner conflict, it's because within it there's a war going on between different forces on a psychic level. And it's a war because the psyche is seen by Freud and Carl Jung as a dynamic process of forces coming together. Therefore, the ability of the psyche to resolve those conflicts means then that there is a unification of the opposites, these opposite forces, and that process of the unification of these opposite forces brings about all of the symbols that Freud and Jung use in their studies. That's what they want to grasp. What is it? For them, this irrational conflict produces symbols. The goal of the human being, of course, is to resolve those conflicts. And therefore, when it is resolved, it's called the unification of the opposites. We should add for ourselves, it's a unification of opposite forces within the psyche. Therefore, all symbols in dream analysis, for both Freud and Jung, must always be traced back to one's personal history. Symbols are not allegories, and they're not signs, S-I-G-N-S. They are images of the contents, which for the most part transcend consciousness. It's absolutely necessary for us to come to terms with the symbols of the unconscious. If we become fascinated with the symbols from the unconscious, that produces a displacement of all of these energies, and we get further into our own conflict and our own human suffering. Therefore, it's absolutely necessary for us to come to terms with it. How do you do it? All right, here's Jung's great quote. It's necessary with any symbol for the person who's experiencing it to find associations with them, personal associations with them, personal associations with them. The associations contain all the necessary clues that will enable the patient, with a little reflection, to guess what the fantasy figures mean, and to use the symbols as a way of assimilating the unconscious contents. That's what he's doing. That's how you assimilate the unconscious contents. Each symbol represents aspects of this conflict. Therefore, if you get the patient to associate with it and try to reflect on it, then they'll make sense from their own personal history. They make sense out of it, our own personal history, and that releases them from the power and the fascination of those symbols. Therefore, symbols are locked up and manifest themselves in the psychic realm. Right? That's their origin. They emerge from it. They express the conflict. The subject then has to then make associations with it, go back into their personal past to make connections with them, and that process is a healing process. Now, Jung says, notice, this is all within intra-psychic. Therefore, Jung says, and here's a quote, psychology as a science has to hold aloof from all metaphysical assertions, must keep free of all metaphysical assertions. Therefore, the whole realm of philosophy and metaphysics must be ignored, because they are intra-psychic conflicts. There's another reason, by the way, for that, simpler one. Psychology follows the model of medicine. Medicine makes a claim that all within the body is their domain. They can talk about it with authority. That's their domain. Psychology comes along and it says, we make a claim that we are the knowers of everything going on within the inner psychic life of man and its connections with the emotional system of man. Therefore, it must be confined within it. Therefore, if you can't get out of that individual intra-psychic situation,